welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name's Emma, if you haven't met me before, but lots of familiar names here. And I'm joined by Jeff, and today we are going to show you some of the true application use cases of some of the latest features in SmartSuite. So I'm sure many of you joined the What's New webinar. We will be highlighting a handful of those features that were introduced last week. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Jeff, and he will get started with the first couple of features.
I'll quickly talk about the features that we're going to cover, and then we'll dive directly into the applied feature examples, and then we'll follow it up with questions and answers towards the end, but we'll stop maybe a couple of features increments along the way just to make sure that we don't lose traction if there's a specific question about something that we talk about along the way. Emma, feel free to interrupt me and I'll go ahead and do the same. As far as the features or topics that we're going to cover today, we're first going to go over conditional sections and section descriptions and really what that unlocks for our users, our power users. And then we're going to go through how you can hide fields and even include a record cover image. So a lot of you have probably seen the page settings ability within looking at a record summary in terms of choosing how you want it laid out, whether it's a 50-50 or a one column or a 70-32 column. We now have more options there for you to even further personalize the way that record summary looks. We're going to show you what that looks like live. We're going to go through folder permissions and how to be able to grant maybe an entire folder of views to a particular team or user or set of users. And then the GetList function. So this is one of our newer functions for our formulas and incredibly powerful. A little bit difficult to wrap your head around at very first, but once you get down the first or second use cases for it, it's something that you almost look for reasons to use it for. So I'm going to cover that at a high level, and then the really simply removing the SmartSuite branding from a form, which is available in all of our paid plans. And then we're going to dive directly into automation. A lot we've done with automations in terms of what you can do in our action outputs as far as clearing or appending, as opposed to just strictly being able to replace values. We'll explain what that means if that's unfamiliar to you. How we can use calculations, how we can delete records in an action, and then even how we can dynamically send a message to different channels or different users depending on the context of that triggering record for that automation. Unless we have any immediate pressing questions, I'm going to go ahead and dive in.
So first off, this session will be recorded, so it'll be sent to you tomorrow morning. It'll be on YouTube later today. So just want to make sure people know that in the chat. I think you're much better.
Cool. Thank you, Emma.
If it does, then you can just turn your video off, but we'll see. We'd like to see you though, but.
Let me know. Just interrupt me and tell me to turn my video off if it's getting bad.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. So first, conditional sections and section descriptions. To get to this portion, we're going to open up this record summary view. And what this is basically, in our tables, we have rows, or we call them records. This is basically saying, without needing to show it in a grid view or a card view, I just want to see all of the information about this record all at one time. We can create these sections, and these sections allow us to put fields into different categories. We can collapse them, so it's really easy to go and find the information that we need in a moment's notice, whether it's regarding time and budget, change requests, deliverables, etc. What we've been able to do now at this point, I'll explain actually section descriptions first, because it's a whole lot more straightforward. If you need to explain that this section is maybe just consisting of general project information, you can now include that. When opening this section up, you're going to immediately see the section description. So super helpful when rolling this out to a new team or introducing this product to your company as a whole, being able to just really quickly explain what they're going to find in that section. Some sections may not be relevant depending on the context of the record. And so that is where we're going to introduce the conditional sections. So in this case, we have all of these different sections, right? sometimes, let's say in this example scenario, that change requests may not always be relevant. Let's say I really only want to see change requests when there actually is one that has been approved and has been applied to this project. I want maybe my project manager or leadership to be able to see those change requests for the most part, be able to review whether those requests should be taken into account. But again, for the most part, I don't want everybody to always see all of the change requests that we have going through. And let me find the right record here that applies. Perfect. What I've been able to do is actually say if the approved change requests, if the number of, this is a count field, of change requests that have been approved is 0, then I don't even want to see that section at all. And as you can see, as we open up Gamma product packaging, we don't see that section. Now let's look at what it looks like to actually put that in place. As you can see, for this one, we have approved change requests equal to 1. For those of you curious what this is, essentially, I have a relationship between my projects and the change requests table to say that if somebody has submitted a change request as related to this specific project, I'm counting the number of change requests that are actually linked to this project. And then I'm filtering to say, I only want to factor change requests where the status of it is marked as approved. And so if it's not approved, then it won't show it. But if it is approved, it's going to be relevant to this project immediately, where I want everybody to see what that change request consisted of and maybe why we are pivoting in the direction that we are pivoting for this specific project. And so when we look at the change requests section, we can hit this ellipse over here on the right-hand side, pull down this or open up this menu, and we can see edit visibility conditions. In this case, we have said, I only want to display this section when this condition is met, and the condition is where approved change requests is greater than 0. So we just saw this number is 1 here for approved change requests. So it is greater than 0. So it is indeed showing the change requests section. But as we saw in the previous, go ahead and move our faces here on Zoom. Cool. When we went ahead and opened up the Gamma product packaging, since this number is 0, we don't see it whatsoever. Super useful for larger use cases where we have big records and we want to give folks the information that they need immediately without being bogged down by a bunch of data within the same view. The next thing that we're going to cover here is how we can hide fields and maybe even have a record cover image for a specific record. And so similar menu that we just opened up a moment ago, but let's say we've actually implemented this approved change requests condition for that section, but we have a number of people asking what this field is. And at this point, it's probably more valuable for us to just go ahead and hide that field, have it behind the scenes, right? We still want it to hide the section, but we don't necessarily need it to confuse anybody about what's happening. That's one scenario in which this feature could be super valuable. And so to access it, we're going to come over here to page settings. And like I mentioned previously, when going through the agenda, we have the ability to control our page layout from this menu. And if you've never seen this before, this is something we've had for quite some time, but the ability to say that you want to view your data in these different formats, super powerful, right? Everybody wants that level of flexibility for the most part. But what we can get here is the ability to say, these are all of my fields in this record, and I don't necessarily want to have this field visible. And so it still, again, exists on the back end of this record, but in this case, completely hidden. So we don't have to worry about anybody being confused about what they're looking at or what this does. Very valuable. And so unless we have any questions, I'll show you how we can also make it to where we have a cover image present for a specific record as well. So in this settings tab, a lot more coming here in the future, but for now, right now, what we have is the record cover image ability to be able to say, if you have a files and images field type within this table, you can actually choose to make it populate as the header of that record. And so as of right now, we have these standard PDFs in place for some of these records. But if we open this up, we can see that we have a lovely picture of our good friend Gareth Pronovost from Gab Consulting. in this record right here over here in project documents, we're actually going to just use that as our cover image for this record. For those that find the visual experience to be extremely important, this is a little something that we've added to further encourage adoption and to make SmartSuite your home forever. Let me go into the tasks table for this next piece. So this next part is going to be around folder permissions. This feature does a whole lot more than you would maybe think at face value. Extremely powerful and something that I've been waiting for some time, something that a lot of the customers that I work with have been waiting for some time. For context, probably meet with about anywhere between 20 to 30 different SmartSuite using teams on a weekly basis. I field a lot of different requests. This is something that I think was probably the most requested feature that I got in terms of, hey, I want to be able to say that only this person or this team or this group of one-off users can access this view or this set of views. And in this case, this is going to be pertaining to, in this initial rollout, this set of views. And so if we look at all the different views that we have for our tasks, obviously we have a ton of different ways in which we can visualize data in SmartSuite. But let's say I've created a folder of views that are particular to a specific team. I have active product tasks in which I've filtered down to where the project contains the word product. And so it could exist however it is in your solution, however it is that you've organized your data. In this case, I'm just keeping it really simple in terms of saying, if it says product in the name, it likely is pertaining to product, right? And so then I want to see this in a grid view format. And then I also want to see it maybe in a timeline view format for us to be able to dial in on those different tasks and see who owns what and when that piece of work is due. In this case, I don't need maybe marketing, I don't need HR, I don't need everybody to be able to have visibility into what the product tasks are. Maybe I don't care if they see it, but I want it to be just immediately apparent for that product group. What I can do is hit this ellipse and open up a drop-down menu on the folder level and come here to folder settings. And from there, I can say right now, the folder visibility is for everyone, but I actually want to dial into selected members. And so I can come here to my group of members and choose who it is that I want to grant access to, or I can come down to teams and say, you know what, I've already organized members into a product team in my workspace administration menu. Let me just go ahead and add them to that list. And then the moment that I hit, last piece here would also be permission rules, but more relevant, probably more often than not, we're going to be using members and teams. Let me hit save on that. And now at this point, the only people who will be able to see this collection of views in this folder are going to be the people that I have chosen to allow them to. I believe we're going to pass it over to, unless, again, we have questions. And again, I don't know if I should say again, I don't know if we mentioned this at the very beginning. Be sure to throw your questions into the Q&A section of this meeting. That way we can track whether we've answered it live or type the answer to you from behind the scenes. I'll now pass it over to Emma for our Get function. If you're ready for us, Emma.
I am. We do have a couple questions. We have some confusion on how to create a folder. So first off, folders are available on the professional and enterprise plan. And if you can see my screen okay, in order to create a folder, you would just hover over this panel here that says create new view, and it would be an option to create a folder. Then you can select it, and then you would drag the views. So first you'd open the folder, and then you can drag the views into the folder like that. And then we do have a question about, will the cover images of a record be visible in the table? So the purpose is just per record. So of course you can show them like product documents, or you can have a card view that shows a file. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If it's in a card view like this, you can go into field settings and you can display. So let's get rid of filter so we can see that. There we go. So it will give you the visibility of the image or file in a way the table level. But that unique image is per record, like that. Okay, I think that's it, Jeff. All good?
Believe so, yeah. Unless,
Okay.
Dimitri, if you want to just clarify what you meant by will cover image
Oh,
of
I
record
think we just covered that. I think we're good.
in app. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if they meant in the phone app or whether it was in the table. Sorry, but
Oh, I see.
let's do,
He
yep,
probably meant the mobile app.
potentially.
Okay. Maybe you can check on your phone. Okay, all right. So I am going to dive into a couple features here. First one being the GetList formula function. So the reason why we're using GetList in this case is because we're wanting to use a filter in this scenario. So the GetList will return a list of values of a specific field in a related record. So what that means is in a project management focused use case, we want to know where in the project are we waiting, or who in the project are we waiting on. So in this case, we're concatenating it just to get the name into text version, but we're trying to determine which of the project tasks have a status of complete and who's assigned, and then descending, so not complete, sorry. The project task is not complete, meaning they haven't done it yet. This here represents the person who is assigned to the task that is not complete. And we're pulling up the due date to ensure an ascending order. So essentially, the latest due date or the earliest due date that's coming up, that's not complete, and pulling who's assigned to that task. So we can see that we're waiting on Emma for this particular. If you go into the task here, you can see the earliest due date or past due date is assigned to me, and it's not complete, it's ready for review. Therefore, I am the person that we are waiting on within the project. So let me know if you have any questions on that one. It can be used in many different ways, but again, the reason why we're using the GetList is because we can create these filters like this. And then just to clarify, the ascending just means the order. So if it's going in earliest state or latest state to earliest state, we're descending. Okay. Next feature, we are going to show you how, and this is a very simple one, but we've been asked a lot for it, especially when you're using and embedding forms on websites. So if you go into, let's say we have a change request form here. And we'll look at this from a customer lens, so we can understand potentially a customer is looking to request a change for a product or a project. At the bottom here, we have the Powered by SmartSuite form. A lot of times people embed this on their website and they're wanting their more custom branding. Potentially it makes the customer feel that it's more native experience. We can remove this by going into the settings here and very simple uncheck. So when we go to share the form, it will not show at the bottom. There. So very easy to do, but I'm sure a lot of people are excited about that feature.
Emma, before we
Mhm.
move on to the next portion, is there any way we can review the syntax for get list from that formula menu?
Mhm. Do we have any specific questions on it?
I can do this as well. Can you click on get list in,
Yes.
yep, and then show perfect. So if we're looking at how to implement this in general, we're going to follow this order here for get list, which anytime you want to look at the syntax for a function, you can go ahead and just click on the function within the menu on the left-hand side. Super easy. But what we want to do is look through a linked record relationship. And first step, we want to filter by a condition. In this case, we're filtering by the tasks status. These tasks are related to the project, but the task status cannot equal complete. So this task hasn't been done yet. And the next piece is the field that we want to return. So in this case, this is the task owner, and we've actually titled the assigned to field owner. So this is essentially saying, give me the value of the assigned to field if the task is not complete yet. The next piece is, how do I want to sort them? So I want to sort by some sort of date value. Maybe in this case, that's what we're doing. And so I want to sort by the due date that is on that task. And so if you've explored due date at a high level, it consists of the beginning and end of that specific task or project. And so what we're saying is, give me or sort it by the end date of that due date and give it to me in ascending order. And then what we're doing with the top function that we've wrapped around it is saying, go ahead and give me the first value. And by putting the one at the end after the comma, it's saying, only give me one value, right? And we're only getting the most recent or the next task that's up, essentially, in order of due date that is not complete. And then we wrapped it in a concat function because that actually does return a list. And what we're saying when we wrap anything in concat is, just go ahead and give me the raw text of whatever that output is. And I hope that's helpful. But there's a ton that you can use GetList for. In this case, we're using GetList to get just one value. You can use it to retrieve dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of values from a linked relationship, depending on the setup of your solution.
Great. Anything else? Any other questions?
I don't think so yet. How in projects app to hide completed tasks in a linked record of tasks? How in projects app to hide completed tasks in a linked record of tasks?
So I think they're looking to only show records that are completed here.
I think they want to move, they probably want to move completed tasks or hide them once they are completed. And we can actually change maybe you were going to show this, change the sort order of these records from within this view. But for the most part, if you're looking to hide records based on a condition, you can do so within a table, right? And so what a lot of folks do is, can we go over to the tasks table real quick, Emma, if that's possible? And right now this is perfect. It's being grouped by the projects that they're pertaining to. If you're looking to work on tasks related to a project, you can easily filter by that project, or we can group it by that project, scroll down to it, and then we can filter to only show tasks that are not in the status of complete, which is far easier than I think we were trying to do from the projects table. I hope that's helpful. Boom, all gone.
Okay, we have a question about SmartSuite forms. So we currently don't have pre-filled forms, if that's what you're asking.
It'd be,
But,
yeah. Sorry, Emma, my bad. Go ahead.
Oh, but you can have it create a new record, find a record, and update a record. But it always is going to create a record. But now we have the delete action. So we may be able to delete it. Fill
Yep.
the record.
Long story short, as far as forms are concerned, they create new entries. We have plenty of folks who have workarounds in which you can have it you can have it populate an existing record using automations, using find records and updates and deletes. But for the most part, if you're looking to have folks update existing records, we would likely encourage them to become users of SmartSuite and adopt it. Or we have amazing partners at fillout.com that include that bit of functionality if you have a larger group of stakeholders that don't necessarily need to regularly interact with the data. They just need to sometimes interact with the data, maybe in this case via form.
Okay. Looks like Brandon is attending to some of the formula questions. So thank you. So we're going to go over some of the new automation actions. So what you're familiar with is just the replace. So we won't go over that today. That's how our automations have always been. An additional one we now have is to clear the value. So that one's pretty self-explanatory. Maybe your record matches a condition and you want to clear it. And you can access that by selecting your trigger. For those of you who aren't quite familiar with automations help you manage those manual tasks, make them more efficient. So we have what we call a trigger, and this is basically what kicks off an action, meaning what's being performed in SmartSuite. So we have a variety of different triggers that can kick off actions. So whether a data is being created, a data point is being created, a record's being updated when it matches a condition, and more. When you go to the actions, you can see we've added a couple more here. One being merge records, which has been quite a while now, but Jeff will show you the delete records. If you go into the update records, and we'll go over this in just a second, actually, so I'll clear that. You'll notice we have a couple new options. So I'll go over the append and then calculate one. Don't forget the initial always has been is replaced, and then you can now actually clear a value. So to go into the append action, I'll give you the use case first. So potentially we have our project here and we've had a change request come in. So potentially via new request here, or if we have change requests coming in through a form. When we make a change request, it's oftentimes that there will be new supporting documentation. So we can see Gareth has been added here. There's 2 files now. We're going to create an automation that will basically add the supporting documents to the parent project record to ensure that all the documentation is up to date. So how we will set that up, we've titled it new product documentation and we're using the append action. What append means is it's going to, won't replace exactly what's been there, but it'll just add to it. So all the updated documentation is in the record. So we can do this by using the when a record is updated, because what's changing here is the change request is being approved. So we don't want it to be moved over until the actual record has been approved. So when it has been approved, we can go from when the status changes from not equal to approved to equal to approved. This is representing the change of the record because someone is likely changing that status field. What we'll need to do here is we'll need to find the record, meaning we need to know which project is associated with which change request. We have our change request linked to a project, so we know that the condition would be where the project name matches project. I can show you why, because if you go into change request, we have a linked record where the project name is inside the linked record project field. So that's how we would find the record. We would know which one to update the files of. Then we use a simple update record action, and this is where the new features come into play. So we're selecting ensure that you have that find records and projects. We're now working in the projects table because we're going to append or add the supporting documentation from the change request to the original documentation link field. So we can select which field to update. In this case, we're wanting to update the original project documents. The appending will allow us to just add the value next to the old one. So we'll go ahead and see that the supporting documentation is added on. So if we go ahead and we ran this just before, we can see that the change request here has been approved for the project, and we put the supporting documentation. If we now go to the project record of the refactor, let's see where it is. Refactor, we'll do it from this side. Refactor primary, we open it up, we can see which project it is linked to right here. Sales and marketing, if we go into that record, we'll notice that there has been updated files. So that supporting documentation is now a part of the parent project record. Let me know if you have any questions on that. Okay. I'll keep going and then we can circle back. So the next one is a calculation within the automations. So a lot of this can typically be done by formulas, but it is pretty clean to just add on values, eliminates the need for a formula field, which is always nice. So in this use case, we're going to stick with the change request here. But let's say that in addition to the supporting documentation, we are incurring an additional estimated cost of the change request. It's going to cost us more to provide this change. So in this case, we have a field with a numerical value indicating how much this change request is going to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to locate in our projects field, we're going to understand that we have a field here called estimated project costs. So this is what we assumed the project cost. However, when we have a change request, we will need to update this to include that change request amount. So this is when the calculation automation action can be useful. So in this case, what I'm calling it is just adding the estimated costs of the change requests to our overall estimated cost. And we can do this similar to before. When a record is updated, in this case, the change request is being approved. It needs to be approved before we can determine that the estimated costs are added. Same thing here, we're locating the project record that is linked. So the project name is equal to that linked record. So we know exactly which one we're updating. And then the action here would just be ensure that you have that linked record to update connected. Now we're back into the project table. We've selected, so these are the two traditional automation actions here, but you can see that we now have some math operations. So I've selected add, and in here I'm selecting which field I want to add from the change requests. In this case, I want to add estimated costs of the change requests. So let's go into here and let's see a change request. This is, okay, we'll do 45,000, 3 additional developers. Website 2.0. I think we already did one earlier. But if we go into, we can notice that the estimated project costs increased from 40,000 to 85,000. Easy enough. Okay, I'll stop there and see if anyone has questions on this.
Nothing has come through at this point.
Okay, I guess we can keep going and then we will do some Q&A at the end.
Awesome. So I went ahead and created a new project record as well as a set of tasks pertaining to that record. In this case, we're going to look at example project for webinar, and then these task examples 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so what I'm going to show really quickly is just the ability to delete records as an action. And so what we're going to do is first, give me a moment here. Happened to be webinar day as I'm having issues, but we are good. I'm going to go through and just show the automation setup here. And what we're actually doing is deleting the project itself and all of the tasks pertaining to it all in one automation rather than having two. And so what we have to do is actually start it from our tasks table. And what we've done in the tasks table is actually looked up the status of the project. We can always see at the task level where the project status is. In this case, we could maybe even hide that lookup field, but that lookup field is actually going to be what triggers this automation. And so when a record matches conditions where the status of the task is proposed, and then the project deletion, which I'm calling this lookup field, when that lookup field moves to rejected or delete, then we want to delete the task record. And after we delete the task record, we then want to find one record in projects. And so we're going to find, essentially in this case, the project that task was linked to. And what are we going to do with that project? We're going to go ahead and delete that as well. And so when we come over here and look at the tasks that are related to the example project for webinar, they are all in the proposed status. And then over here, we don't have a stage quite yet for it, but let's say that we're going to go ahead and move this to rejected or delete. The moment that we do that, we can slowly but surely start to see the task example 1, 2, 3, and 4 get deleted, as well as that project record itself. If we're looking for a quick way to be able to receive project requests, right? Maybe a group is proposing something for their team, and if it gets denied, we want to quickly eliminate it from the queue. Some folks will use a filtering mechanism so that they can have that historical data, which I'm usually a fan of. Others prefer to just completely get rid of those projects and those tasks that were proposed. And in this case, we went ahead and just did that super easily with the new automation action. A lot to unpack there. Any questions? Maybe not. Doesn't look like it. Okay, cool. Making our job easy today. Feel free to throw those questions in if you have them, though. The last thing we're going to cover today is something that I'm actually extremely excited about. We had one of the partners in our ecosystem actually recommend or request this feature, and I believe it to be extremely powerful for larger groups using SmartSuite, and that is the dynamic options for Slack automation actions. And so what I mean by that is historically, if something happens to a record within a solution or a table, and you want it to be the trigger for a Slack SmartSuite automation action, that automation action would actually push to the same channel or the same user every single time. So if this task was moved to, let's say, complete, historically it would always go to the same channel or the same person to say, hey, this was done. This is the context around it. Now what we've been able to do is say, hey, maybe there's another field that exists within that table, whether it's looked up, whether it's some sort of formula that can actually guide us to a different Slack destination, different channel, different user to be able to send that message to. And so in this case, we've actually created a couple of different things I'm going to cover at a high level, but the most important one is this Slack channel formula. And so if you've never worked with our case function before, super powerful for doing something exactly like this. If there's some sort of condition that is being met and we want a very specific output, we can actually do exactly that. So in this case, I'll come over here really quickly and show you our type field, which is a single select field. And so we have all of these different project types, right? And so in this case, I'm saying I want to send it to a specific Slack channel based on the type of project that this is. And so we're going to use this SmartSuite case function to be able to say if the type will show the, we'll show the syntax as we're going through here as well. The condition is based on type. And if the type has product launch, then I want you to send it to the product channel. If the type is brand development, then in this case, we did Emma Montgomery so that we could test this and it went directly to Emma Montgomery in our Slack channel, right? If it's market research, we want to send it to the R&D channel and so on and so forth down the list. And I'll explain how this is used in practice in a moment. It'll make a little bit more sense, but this is how we can do that. And so if we want to maybe use a formula to say that I want to take the value of whoever's assigned to it to be able to send them a direct Slack message, we can do that. If we've assigned people via linked record and we can clarify which team they're on and their team has an actual Slack channel open, you wanted to send there, we can do that as well. But let's go ahead and without further ado, look at this automation action in practice. And so I've called it Slack notifications dynamic, but in this example, we're saying when the stage changes from any to equal to complete. So the moment we complete a project, very simply, then I want you to send a message. And who do I want you to send, or where do I want you to send this message to? In this case, we can actually use that formula function output to distinguish where or who that should go to. And like I said, if it was this type, it would go here. If it was that type, it would go there, and so on and so forth down the list. But we can use any sort of text function. As you can see, we can use a product description, project goals, and then we have these formula outputs, which their output is in a text format. We can actually use those to populate this field as well dynamically from whichever field that triggered the automation. We've always been able to do this, but be able to fill the context or the message that is going to go to that channel or that specific user with fields of information from the record that triggered it. In this case, I just threw test in there, but a ton that we can actually do from within this menu. Emma, did we get any questions on that? I know that's a heavier sort of feature to walk through. I hope it was clear.
I think maybe they're still typing. We do have a question related to the delete record automation. So while people are coming up with questions on the other one, I'll just go ahead and show you. So someone is asking if we can have records deleted when a due date matches a certain condition, meaning when a due date is a month ago, they just want the record to be deleted. So in this case, I set up an automation when a record matches a condition and the due date is a month ago. It's just going to go ahead and delete the record. So in this case, you can try it out. Rebranding, let's make it a month ago, so the 17th. And we can watch it just disappear. If I did it right. There we go, it's gone. So pretty easy. Hopefully that cleared it up. Okay, we do have a question about the Slack automation. What were the more options on the Slack automation at the bottom of the automation?
Pulling it up right now. So we can actually choose the name of the bot if there's a specific emoji or a URL that we want the bot icon to be populated with, which is pretty cool. And then if this is enabled, Slack will try to automatically expand a preview for links in messages sent. Thanks for asking.
We have a request for a webinar on help desk support. Interesting. That could be a good one.
So I know we went over a lot of these new features in the previous webinar. The goal for today was really to just see this stuff live, right? Because it starts to get the wheels turning about how it can be applied to your own solution. And if y'all have any feedback for us or any specific questions on how you might be able to implement some of these new features in your workflow, feel free to reach out. But I hope this was helpful to the rest of the group, because I know it was even helpful for me going through and building a lot of this out, because we're constantly adding new features. What do you think, Emma, on a weekly basis at this point? That
Yes.
it keeps our
A
jobs.
lot of times I'm on demos and I'm like, I make a funny face just because there's a feature released that morning that I didn't know about. But yet,
Keeps it fun.
yes.
Constantly innovating, never stopping.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.